Taxes. The thing we all hate. But yeah, a necessary evil. Now, if we go into taxes, again, clearly this is a monster subject. But all we need to know is that Shopify gives you the chance, the opportunity here, the ability to add in different tax rates for pretty much anything. All right. We've got a tax setting here, which is all taxes are included in my prices. Now, this is the biggest takeaway of this section. Make sure you do that. Make sure if you're going to become a Shopify developer or whatever, make sure you would advise people to do that, because the biggest turnoff by far is additional costs at the checkout. So you're buying something that you think costs $30, for example, and then you get to the checkout and you discover there's all kinds of taxes and this and that to pay, and it's the number one reason why people will run away from the checkout at the last minute. So make sure you include it and that you do all of the complicated tax stuff behind the scenes. And it is complicated. It can get complicated, okay? I don't want you to get put off at this stage thinking, oh my God, this whole Shopify thing's a nightmare. You know, this is just basically business. This is business. If you're going to be doing business internationally, then these are the kind of things you have to think about. And in fact, it's one of the main reasons why I advise my students, certainly in the beginning, just to deal with the US. Because in fact, the US is an awful lot easier because taxes are not charged in the same way, for example, as they are in Europe, where you have to add in France it's a TVA or a VAT in the UK, which is an additional 20%. There'll be a GST, for example, in Australia, which, forgive me, I don't know the details, but it might be different depending on what state you're in. And so it goes on, but you can set it all up here. Now, this is the job for somebody who really understands taxes in these various parts of the world. So please, please, please don't get overwhelmed. I'm not even going to get into this because I'm not a tax expert, but please don't get overwhelmed, okay? Just start with, a basic, say, for example, the US customer base where the taxes are simple. And in any case, even if you are going to start selling all over the place, make sure you include that tax in your price. And just bear in mind that at some point you're going to have to pay somebody, i.e. the tax man, a portion of that, which you can work out later on. All right, so there we go. Taxes all done in, I hope, under 90 seconds, all right? Please don't stress about taxes, certainly in the beginning, but just be aware this is where you set them up. This is where you go to when you need to change all that stuff, and make sure you got your taxes properly sorted out. Okay, so well done, you survived the taxes lecture. So let's have a look now at sales channels. Now, I talked about this in a previous lecture, and I pointed out that basically over here on the menu we have sales channels, and that by default we have an online store. Of course, we're in e-commerce, we're going to have an online store, that's paramount. But we can add other sales channels, and this is where you would do it. So if I click on the Add Sales Channel button here, as I showed you before, we can add in stuff to Amazon, we can go onto Facebook, we can, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. And in fact, in a later lecture, I'll dive into a few of these that I think are the most interesting and just point out what is possible. But just know for now that if you're going to manage your sales channels, if you're going to add them, if you're going to remove them, this is where you would come. So now it's time to look at the checkout. So let's click on checkout. Now, the checkout as an overall concept is super, super important, and I believe it's something that certainly newbie e-commerce people tend to overlook a bit. There's a lot of focus on the products and the look and feel of the site, etc. And the checkout is kind of a little bit neglected. It's just kind of accepted. Basically the defaults are accepted and that's it. But the number of people who will leave your store at the checkout is big. It's one of your biggest challenges is to make sure they get over that final hurdle. And I'm going to be talking about bits and pieces throughout the course on how you can basically convert your customers better at the checkout, or if they leave without paying, how you're going to get them back and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be looking at the checkout in a lot more detail throughout the course. But at the moment, let's just have a look at these settings because they are key. Now the first one is customer accounts. Now if you're unsure what a customer account is, it's a bit like if you go on somewhere like Amazon and you have your Amazon account, right? You log in and it's got your address and they've stored your credit card details, and it makes the whole process easier. And it's kind of tempting, let's say, for particularly when you're starting out, to think, yeah, I definitely should have a customer account. I need that. But actually, it's a mistake. In many ways, I feel it's a rookie mistake to do that, because you are giving them something extra to do. If you're Amazon and you're a super well-known global brand, then you can do that. People trust you, the whole thing, it's easy. But when you're just starting out with an e-commerce store, people don't know you. And if you ask them then to create an account, it creates a hurdle for them. You're forcing them to make an account, for example. They don't really want to do it, and so they will leave. They will leave in many ways for that reason. So over here we have various options. Accounts are disabled, accounts are optional, or accounts are required. Now, certainly I can't think of any reason why you would have accounts are required necessarily, unless you become massive. In the beginning, just make sure that accounts are disabled. There's no real reason. Okay. Later on, you might want to go for optional, but certainly disable, which is the default. Make sure that that's checked on. Down here, the next one is the customer contact. Yeah. Again, take the default here. Customers can only check out using email. It just makes it so much easier. And in fact, you don't need their phone number, which is this other one up here. Email is super important. Again, I'm going to be talking about how to use their emails as we go through the course. But grabbing their email is what you want. You need to communicate them anyway when you get the order, but you can do cool stuff with their email later on down the road. So yeah, just make sure that it's checkout. Customers can only check out using email. Make it as smooth as possible. For the form options, again, this is all exactly by default. So just the last name, that's fine. If you really want first and last name, go for it, but last name is fine. No need for a company name. No need for that additional second line, that's optional. Shipping address, phone number, again, hidden. No real reason for it. So just take those defaults. Now, the actual order processing itself, while the customer is checking out, we want the billing address to default to the shipping address. In 99% of cases, that's exactly what we have. This part here is always a little contentious. Ask for permission to send promotional emails to customers from your store. Now, Shopify says by default customers don't agree to receive promotional emails. I prefer, maybe I'm just a little bit more aggressive, I prefer to go for that my customer agrees to receive promotional emails. Okay, I want them in my group because I want to do stuff later on. Emails are very, very valuable. So I would put that on by default, but that's up to you. You may feel differently. For the rest of this, just leave as is. Okay, there's no need to change your language. You probably, if it isn't English or if it's not your language, then clearly change it. But when it was set up, the store has detected where you are. I suspect that language is already set up as you want. Now these things here, I'd like you just to do a few clicks here, if I may. So we got refund, privacy, and TOS, so terms of service statements. And these are boring but essential things that we're going to add into the site. I'm going to show you how to create the page for these a bit later on. But all I need to do right now is create a refund policy. And we can do this by simply clicking on this button. And bingo, it will throw in a whole refund policy. You can read it if you want, which in the beginning is absolutely fine. Yeah, it's put in things like my address here. You can see this. So if you're going to change your address, you'll need to come back and regenerate this stuff. My email's in there, so if I change my email, I'd want to change that as well. But as a getting started with a refund policy, this is perfect. And the same thing with the privacy policy. And the same thing with the terms of service. So just generate those three things, click on save, and we are done with the checkout for the time being.